All right, looks like we're ready to get started. So I just want to introduce myself. My name's Cullen McLarty, and I'm going to be talking about strategies for ongoing client success. And so just a little bit about me. I work at a startup that's over in Northampton, Machine Metrics. We're a web-based startup, and I personally am not a web developer. I am engaged to one, and she basically told me, she's like, I use a lot of the strategies and techniques you use in working with customers and the clients that you interface with. I apply that to my business, and I think you could. Thanks for the reminder.
We should.
And I think you could take those, tune it a little bit, and kind of really share it with some other people, and I think they're going to find a lot of value out of it. And so what I do day to day is I'm what's called a customer success manager, and it's a startup. I wear a couple different hats, but primarily this is a job that came about from SaaS-based businesses, right? A new model kind of started growing out of sales, which is rather than companies selling all at once, right? They'd say, okay, well, here's our product. If you buy it, and if you don't, you don't. That was changing to a much more subscription-based model. So, companies were having to sell a product, and then they were having to maintain that product and the relationship to customers. They were actually having to provide an ongoing, service to customers that was beyond just like answering technical questions and things like that, but actually engaging with them, a little bit of sales, a little bit of support, a little bit of just like helping people out, making sure they understood how to use the product so they kept getting value out of it, because they had a commitment to these people for over a longer period of time, and that's kind of where this customer success position came out of. And so a lot of what I do is engaging with people, whether it's through support needs, or just from kind of helping them get through whatever project our company is currently working with them on. And so what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit, which it looks like I'm getting a little bit of like stretching here, but looks like everything is still legible. It's just the basics of a client relationship. And these things are kind of universal to a certain extent. I'm going to keep it a little broad because my goal with this is just to give you a little bit of a kind of a mindset to work with, rather than if I get too granular with some of these examples, like what to do in exactly this situation, you're not going to be able to kind of apply the same lens into other situations and how it might help you in your own business, whatever that might be. So I will go through some of these broad things, such as the basics of a relationship. Going to go through just an email and show you a little bit of the changes that I think can make a huge difference. Small changes that make a big difference in just everyday communication with people. Also going to go through how to repair a damaged relationship, whether this is something that you've made a mistake on, it happens, and that you need to kind of reestablish trust with the client, or if it's just something that's come up that's a problem, inevitable, third party, something you didn't have any control over and isn't your fault, but you're still left with a problem on your hands, and what do you do in that situation? And then finally, I'm going to close out with kind of just some basics. If you have a ticket system, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it's this kind of system that you can put in place for yourself to help mitigate problems before they spiral out of control, and also to make sure it doesn't become a headache for yourself. There's a lot of people that I think they create a ticket system and they stick it in the corner, and they hope they never have to look at it again, and they don't really want to have to interact with all those problems in one place, when really it should be taking a lot of the burden off of your mind, and it should be saving you brain space rather than kind of causing you anxiety. So a good client relationship. So everyone's going to have their own definition of what a good relationship with a client looks like. Someone is going to say, I want to meet with them once, we're going to go over the project, we're going to outline everything I need to do, and then they give me a timeline, I deliver on the timeline, we're done. I never talk to them again. It's just like once at the beginning, once at the end, that's all I really need to do. Whereas other people, you're going to need to have a conversation regularly with a customer. You're going to need to have this communication flowing both ways on a regular basis. So you need to make sure that that relationship stays strong, and also that you have a good way of communicating with someone. If if communication is rough and you feel like you're misunderstanding each other a lot, but you have to work with them maybe a couple times a week, it's going to be a really painful project. And so really a good client relationship is about having clear communication regardless of what method you're using, that's also as minimal as possible, and as clear as possible. In other words, you're not spending a ton of your time focused on this. It's just the information needs to get delivered. They understand clearly, you understand clearly. In my mind, that's great communication. Anything beyond that, maybe you're becoming friends with the client, you know, that's good communication too. I'm definitely not saying you shouldn't try and get to know the people you're working with, but strictly for the purposes of business, you want to make sure that what's important gets communicated and that you understand the expectations as well in a clear way. What communication is really about is, like I said, it's about communicating what you need and what you need to do in basically as few words as possible and creating as few misunderstandings as possible. And I put the caveat in there that this does not mean you should be brusque or rude or anything like that, but you really don't need to write 3 paragraphs to make it seem like you're friendly. And that it's also about understanding that you really do have the same goal. Sometimes I work with people and they see their client as like an obstacle to get around. Or the way they interact with someone they start off from a point of kind of frustration and wondering why this person is causing them difficulty, whether it's the customer that's saying, hey, why don't you already understand what I need? I thought we already talked about this. Or whether it's on your end saying, I included those instructions last week, you know, this is really holding me up. Why can't you do this? Is that you really have the same goal. You both want exactly the same thing, unless you're being deceptive, which I really hope no one would be deceptive with someone. You're trying to deliver a great product, you're trying to complete whatever, whatever this person has hired you to do, and they're looking to get, they've hopefully explained to you where they're going to see value in the project that you're working on them for. Is that they're going to be able to use whatever you're making for them and get a lot of use out of it and get something that is what they paid for, basically. They don't want to feel like they've wasted their money. And I think that sort of, that teamwork mentality is often lost in a lot of communication. It is. We're close to finishing this project. To do this, to finish, we need to do these things. To get you the best product, I think we should work together to understand what are your goals going into this? What are our goals? And I think that it's really key to try and frame it when you're going into these situations. You are working as a team, because I think, like I said, this is a lot about frame of mind. It's not just say, hey, walk into a situation and say, hey, guess what? I really think we're on a team. That's not really going to solve or create a great relationship, but trying to think of things like you are as a team and how you can both succeed. That's what's important. And now, another piece of good communication, I think this is a little bit more one of those micro-level bits where I think it probably applies to people on a more day-to-day basis, where no news is not good news in good communication, which is that if you send an email to someone and you say, hey, if you can just send me over, I just need your contact information, your address, maybe simple stuff, link to social media accounts, so I can include those. And they don't get back to you, say for a couple days. It's not a big deal, but it's out of your hands. You've sent them an email. You've told them what you need from them. Well, that's still not really good communication, right? If it's a week later and you haven't gotten a couple of links or just some simple information, you're the business professional in this situation, and it's sort of your job to make sure that if it's a couple weeks later, maybe they'll say, well, hey, maybe way at the end of the project, they're like, well, we kind of said we'd have this done like a month ago. You can say, well, it took me 2 weeks to get me this. You took an extra week to get me this. This took a lot longer than I thought. We had trouble scheduling these things because you were kind of slow to reply. Well, that still ends up on your hands at the end of the day. And while that would be nice to say, well, maybe next time you should reply faster to my emails, it doesn't always, that's still not good. Your goal is you got to take the high road, which is that if there is no communication, that is by definition not good communication. So I have been in that situation lots of times. I do manage our support system, so I get to work with a lot of people who have problems and they aren't happy about it. And I often send people, well, let's try these things. We'll see if it works out. Let me know what you find out after, we'll just do some basic troubleshooting, and they don't get back to me. It would be really nice for me just to say, okay, well, it must have worked. They're not sending anything in. It must have been a good solution. But I can't do that. And I don't think really any business can do that if they're really hoping to get that great level of kind of relationship with a customer. It's about going a little bit beyond. And this is the kind of stuff that doesn't take much work. In fact, it takes basically no work. but it's going to create something a lot better than if you didn't. It makes a huge impact, especially over time and over a large volume of communications. This is going to really make a difference. Now, that also, really adjacent to that, is never sitting on bad news. Never ever do it. It's really tempting to do that. Like I said, I work in support. I get to deliver a lot of bad news, and I wish I liked it. But I run into a lot of people who have problems, and a lot of these problems aren't going to be easy fixes, whether it's my fault, whether it's their fault, whether it's just the reality of the technology that we're working with. It could be a whole bunch of different things that maybe it's never my fault maybe. That could be the case. Sometimes I am going to make mistakes, but just for this situation, we'll say none of these problems really were caused by me. Really doesn't change the fact that when bad news can still come up. And if I have a meeting with a client, say next week, it's Wednesday, I'm meeting with them on Monday, and I hear like, okay, well, this third party that we were working with, turns out maybe they just went out of business suddenly, or they no longer support that platform. What we were planning on doing won't work. It's bad news. It's not maybe catastrophic or anything. We can find something else, another solution. It would be very easy for me, it's like, well, that sounds like a lot of work, and I've got a meeting with them on Monday. I'll talk to them then about it. I've already got it set up. Why would I kind of go out of my way to get something else scheduled in the meantime? That's not what you want to do at all. It's really easy to do, but if you can get ahead of a problem, bad news is actually one of your best opportunities for that good relationship that I'm talking about here, which is that it's easy to trust someone when everything is going right. You're working with someone and they literally deliver on absolutely everything that they say, nothing goes wrong, smooth every time, that's perfect. But once again, that's just really not going to happen. It would be great to say, well, I just won't make mistakes and I just will only use applications that will stay up to date. I'm never going to run into like abandonware or anything like that, but it will happen. And this is the best opportunity maybe you're ever going to have with someone to come off looking incredibly professional and incredibly on top of what you're doing, which is that when you run into bad news, what you want to do is first off, just get ahead of it. Think about what you're going to need to do. Make an actual plan. Think about it. Don't call the customer up right away and start brainstorming on the phone with them or anything like that. Absolutely do brainstorm. But think about it for a little while, let it digest, and then send them an email, give them a call, and sound very prepared. Hey, this is what happened. We're not going to be able to do X anymore, but I think Y and Z are great options that we still have on the table. This isn't going to cause us any problems long term. I'm only looking at maybe a day or two of delay. Something along those lines is really what you want to do. And like I said, it's about this idea of creating trust with someone who, when you're going to run into these situations, because you will, is about getting ahead of this and looking like that professional. And then at this point, yeah, it's easy to trust someone when everything's going right, but knowing that you're working with someone and that they know they're working with someone, that as soon as something goes wrong, you're thinking about it, you're making a plan, you're prepared for obstacles. Because what they really care about is that you're going to get them safely from point A to point B. They don't really care about all this in-between stuff, and they don't want to hear what a great troubleshooter you are in the moment or anything like that. Maybe that's nice, and it would be cool for them to see how you went through the different options to find the different solutions, and you found a workaround. That's good, but at the end of the day, they really only care about, you hear this, they only care about results, and that is kind of true. And they want to feel like you know how to get them to where they're going, regardless when obstacles come up. Now, I want to give away, I've talked a lot about kind of high-level stuff. I want to give a couple, I did more than 3 changes. I put one here last second. But want to give you all a little bit more concrete things that you can walk away with and maybe try doing. Because I hate just talking about really big picture stuff and you walk in and you're like, so what do I actually do now after having listened to this person talk for 40 minutes? So first off, I was talking about that once you've kicked something, once it's over into the other court, once it's out of your hands, you've sent that email, you're waiting on someone to get you something, don't archive that email you've sent. Maybe it was a phone call, but in this case it's an email, we'll say, and you've sent it, sitting in your inbox, you're chasing inbox 0 maybe. don't archive that email. If you've got Boomerang, use it. Snooze that email for a couple days and use this as a way to kind of keep track for yourself on who owes you what and where that is. Because like I said, just because it's left your inbox, it doesn't mean it's actually left your plate, and it's really good to keep these things kind of within your sight lines instead of archiving. Because as soon as you've archived an email, it's gone until they reply, right? It's not popping back out of that, which means they have to reply, which means you are waiting on that customer to make the next move no matter how long that's going to be. So find another way. Find a way to keep track of that. Now the next one is, say you get an email and you know this is going to be a problem. Maybe it's not a big deal, but it's going to be about like 5 hours till you really can get back to this person, maybe with a solution or even just get back to them in any meaningful way. You know, you need to write them some lengthy explanation, and you're not going to be able to do that for a little while. So just write a reply now. If that's the case, my rule of thumb, if a reply is going to take you more than an hour to give them a complete response, write a quick response right then and there. So say, hey, got your email, I'm going to be taking a look at it, it's going to take me a couple of hours to get to this, but I've seen your email and I'm working on it. Doesn't have to be long, you can do it from your phone. And this will make a big difference in how people feel listened to when you're working on those. The number of times I've sent someone a response, they said, wow, that was an extremely fast response. Thanks for starting to work on this. They're just saying, wow, that was really fast. And I haven't given them anything necessarily. I'm not trying to cheat them. I'm going to give them what they need. But just by sending that really quick reply, it leaves that first impression that you are waiting and you are ready, basically, as soon as something hits, to start working on it. Next, meeting summary. So this one is a little bit of management and also helping your customers. It's going to help you get what you need more often and more reliably. I talked about communication, and a lot of this is so your customers are happier, but it's also so you don't have to send as many emails, and so you don't have to have as much communication. It's just a little bit easier if you could send one email instead of 3 emails to get things rolling. And so I find meeting summaries to be a really, really good way, because oftentimes you're going to be talking to someone for an hour. That's a long time for someone to remember everything you said, especially if you didn't really have a chance. Maybe they got a phone call and you didn't have a chance to sit down at the end of the meeting and say, okay, so here's what we talked about. Here's what you owe me. Here's what I owe you by the next time we meet or by these deadlines. If you've had a meeting with someone, just write a short email, bullet out a couple of those points that say, so this is what I'm going to be working on, and this is what you're going to be working on as I understand it. Let me know if you have any questions. Once again, it doesn't have to be long, but now you've got something and they have something that makes sure you're both at the exact same level of understanding of what's been discussed and what's been agreed upon. And people just forget things verbally. People use their inbox as a method of tracking kind of what they're doing. I know I do. And if I just had an idle conversation with someone, odds are I'm going to forget that compared to if I have an email saying meeting summary of what we talked about last, and I can look at that and see what I need to keep working on. And then my last one, which this treads a little bit more towards marketing, but I still want to touch upon it because I still think it falls under this kind of good client relationship and is a really good way for you to get value out of these great relationships you've built. There's a ton to be said about just why having happy customers is a good thing, which I think should be kind of self-explanatory. But sometimes it is about that bottom line, like what will this actually do for me financially? And the point really isn't during the project process or whatever you're working on them with, it's afterwards or in the long term where you're going to see the most value. And what doesn't happen sometimes is follow-up. Once you've had a great customer, and even a customer maybe that's a client that you've worked with and the job is done, please do follow up with that person. And not in a sense where it's just like, hey, just wanted to make sure things are working well for you. That's fine. But also you could say, hey, we set on this project to give you X. I want to, it's been 30 days since we worked together on this. How's that going for you? Another 60 days or so, send another email. We were going, our plans, your goals for your business were this. And I helped you, we worked on this thing, we're supposed to help you do these, maybe if you was a website, you could say we were supposed to increase, we're trying to increase your viewership, check out your Google Analytics, see if that's happening. If you're trying to get people from, a wider range, different areas. Check your Google Analytics, have we been doing that for you? And if not, is there anything else, has anything else come to mind, or are there any new projects you're looking to start? Because those clients who are really happy, those clients who loved working with you, they are going to be absolutely your best repeat customers if they have more work that they want to do. And a lot of the times people have work that they do want to do. They might just be waiting for someone to say, hey, I can do this kind of work, to remind them that you were great to work with and that you really did give them something concrete, something of value. Because a lot of the time you can make something for someone and they'll have it and they'll may even be happy with it. But they might not actually understand the full value of what you've given them. And there's really nothing wrong with reminding someone that you've really delivered something great for them. That's a great idea. So now I want to go through just a quick email and talk about, this is really one of those, it's the small things, and I wanted to start with an email it's actually a fine email. There's nothing wrong with this email. If you take a second, just look at it. And most emails are going to be a lot longer than this. You've got a lot of other information, but I've shortened it so everyone can read it reasonably. But there's a lot of ways you can actually just, with something like this, and I trust you all could write like a decent email. I'm not going to start with an email that's lots of exclamation points, lots of question marks, lots of capitals. Those emails do happen, and people write them, but I'm going to start from a baseline of, this is a fine email, and you all are capable of writing fine emails. And just a little bit of ways to make it a slightly better email. And I write, I don't know, depending on who you are, you might write dozens to hopefully not hundreds of emails a day. And so this is one of those small changes, is a lot of these are here where a little change can make a big difference in these kinds of things. Reduce the number of emails you're sending just by writing slightly better ones in the first place. So if you've looked at this, like I said, I don't think that there's anything glaringly wrong with this email. Does anyone have any ideas about if there is something wrong with this, or if there's any ways just to make it slightly better? Don't have to. If no one has any immediate ideas, I realize that it is kind of up on the screen and far away. But feel free to let me know if you have kind of any thoughts about this.
Maybe.
Go ahead.
Sometimes I use bullets when I want things.
I really like that answer, actually. And
I was going to say, like, maybe an even more friendly tone, like, I'm looking forward to getting that copy from you, something like that.
Yeah, I like that a lot too, actually. You two have hit upon, well, I'll show you. Exactly my revised.
Good job.
So, 2 out of 2. That was really nice. So, yeah, exactly. First off, yeah, there's nothing wrong with being friendly in an email. It's a good idea, in fact. Maybe be a little aware of how you communicate through emails. Sometimes people think they're being very friendly, and they're yelling at you, right? That's when you read it, and you're like, this person hates me. They're yelling at me, like, what's wrong? And they're like, no, I was just really excited. That's why I used all those capitals. And so be careful with that. But an exclamation point on something inherently positive, nothing wrong with that. That's great. And then bullets. I love bullets. I think of them as a little bit of a double-edged sword. Because what I always caution, I think bullets are great, but if you use bullets, that is the only thing that person is going to read in your email. People will skip over, especially, this is a tiny block of text, so maybe they would read that, but if this was maybe 1 to 2 lines longer, and I had 3 bullets beneath it, they would skip right down to the bullets. So if you put bullets in your email, be sure that everything you actually need them to read is in those bullets. Details, friendly stuff, go for it. Put it in like the main heading paragraph or whatever. But if what you need, what they have to read in the email goes in those bullets, which is great because it gives you a way just to focus exactly onto the important parts of the email. And the next best part of this is going back and looking at this email. It's really easy to find the important content. If this hopefully not turns into, say, a 20-long email chain of information and going back and forth, you can drop out these emails and you'll find those bullets much faster. So yes, that was very good actually. And there's lots of other ways to make emails really, really good. But I'm going to tie this right back to what I was saying earlier about communication, which is maintaining friendliness and all that, but it's also communicating the most you can, the fewest number of words, as efficiently as possible, with little room for misunderstanding, which is really kind of, it's really not that hard to do actually, especially when you just kind of think about what you need out of an email and what you need from them. It's not too hard to do. All right, so on to less fun things, which is that when things go wrong. And I talked about bad news before, but I'm talking about when things are actually wrong. In other words, you've made a horrible mistake. Maybe it could be also just something has gone horribly wrong that you couldn't control, but has fallen into your lap and is now your responsibility. I'll leave individual definitions of kind of what is your responsibility sort of up to you. But let's just say in this situation things have gone really wrong and you are most certainly responsible for cleaning it up and maybe even for causing it in the first place. And I would love for that not to be the case, but to ever happen, it's sort of this really, really bad situation, but it's going to happen at some point. And just to quickly use a kind of an anecdote from my personal experience that really hit me recently with good, really good kind of customer service and client relationship. So I said I'm currently engaged, and we were talking to our caterer actually, and they said, yeah, come over, we're going to treat you to some dinner, you can have some of the food that's going to be on your that we'll serve at your wedding. You try it, you let us know if you have any feedback, and we'll go from there. And it's like, oh, that's a great idea. We get to try all the food, feel a little more confident, and so we go in, and they invited us, they said bring up to 6 people, so we brought in some family, and I have a soy allergy. So it's like kind of a weird one, but not too uncommon, but we told them ahead of time, they're like, hey, as long as there's not like an actual block of soy in this food, it's pretty light, cross-contamination, not an issue. Don't worry too much about it. Just make sure there's no actual soy in the food, or let me know if there is, and I'll find other ingredients, other items on the menu that I can eat. Well, we got there and they said, well, we actually can't serve you anything off of our main menu. We can only serve you this special list we've prepared ahead of time, and it's exceptionally bland and it's not very good. And I was actually not as frustrated because I've lived with this allergy for a long time. My fiance was not amused at all. She was like, we were paying a lot of money for this. Like, this is not what's going to happen at our wedding. You're not going to be like separated out from the crowd eating your sad, like barely flavored steak. That's not going to happen. So we talked to them about it and we were like, wow, this was like really bad. We really were clear with them about what we needed from this. We talked to them a couple times before. We talked to someone in person, so we're like, how the heck did this happen? Like, this is really weird. But they said, okay, hey, come back. We're really sorry about this. We're absolutely sorry. Come on back. We're going to treat you to another dinner. It's going to be a lot better this time. We came back. They actually brought us up to a special place where we got to eat just us two. We talked to the chef, actually, who'd prepared our food. They gave us a bunch of different options. It really wasn't anything different than what they'd initially offered us or anything, really, right? It was all the same food. It wasn't like they went crazy and like half off for your wedding or anything. They just offered us a really, really, really good experience. And by the end of it, I had full confidence they were going to do a great job moving forward. They'd so thoroughly addressed the problem that had gone wrong. We went from, maybe we should just eat the deposit that we've already given them and find someone else, because we got to be sure, right? To, they've got it, no worries. We're going to go forward with them. We'd absolutely recommend them moving forward, no doubts. So that's the ideal reaction someone should have when something goes wrong. You can kind of get that response. Now, that's not going to happen every time, right? There are some situations where you can't fix, and you say, well, it's gone. It's not going to work anymore. We can't do this. It's dead in the water. But to me, that sort of encapsulated what is possible to do, even when things go horribly wrong. And so I want to cover a little bit of when things do go wrong, what do you do? Where do you start? So first things first is take a moment. Don't panic, even if I've woken up to emails that made my heart like sink like a rock, right? So I'm like, oh God, this is going to be my whole week. Like, this is really bad. And I hate like disappointing people and having people mad at me. No one likes that. And so it can be really tempting to kind of lose your head a little bit. And I think everyone is owed maybe a moment of, oh crap. But then it's really important just to stop for a second and take a deep breath and think about what you can do next, because it's happened. It's already happened, whatever's bad. Fire's not going to go out in the next 3 seconds, even if you responded like lightning to this. odds are that wouldn't fix anything. Much, much better is to take a second, take a deep breath, and then make a plan. You really need to get the full information about what's going on. I've run into a couple situations where there's a big problem that pops up, and they're like, okay, well, I'll give them a call. I'm like, all right, great, you're gonna figure it out. And so they call them up and they're like, yeah, I heard you had a problem. What was that problem again? And that's not how you wanna start the conversation with someone who is currently, maybe they're having their own crisis. You don't wanna say like, well, I didn't really take a second to learn about what you're experiencing right now. Really get your head around this, fully understand it. So when they call, they say, yeah, I learned about this, saw that this was happening, this is why it happened, here's what we're gonna do about it. Because once again, this is about results. You're being paid. The client is after something in particular. Right? They have a goal. They have something they're trying to accomplish, and now they're feeling afraid, not really angry, but a lot of anger comes from like a fear of a lost investment. You're just going to like pull the cord. Some of the best words I've ever heard some of the people I work with say is, "Hey, I'm really sorry that this happened, but we're absolutely not abandoning you. We're not going to stop working for you until this is done." And just that assurance that you're not going anywhere, I think can be really important for some people. But at the end of the day, it really is about getting those results, those next steps. And being very clear once that problem you have the problem identified, and you should probably at that point have an understanding of what it's going to take to fix it. Even if it isn't really clear, like it can say, well, this is going to take 3 to 5 days of work, right? That's kind of vague for a customer. But if you still are on the phone with them next and you can say, we will have this done in 5 days, that sounds a whole lot better than, we'll work on this, but I'm not sure when it's done. Well, it's going to get done. And sure, you've given yourself a deadline now, which is not good. That's not really fun, especially if you have to back out on that deadline or miss it. But that's sort of something you have to accept, and that you're offering a deadline and you're putting yourself to it. And then something that also happens is the apology, right? You messed up. Some people really hate apologizing because they feel like, well, it's accepting all the blame, and maybe you are fully at fault, maybe you're not. But apologizing is super important. You gotta say, sorry, we made a mistake. This is absolutely our fault. And then you gotta move on. You don't tell them that, but you need to move on right away and refocus, stop apologizing. Once that's really done and you've really fallen on your sword for this, done apologizing. Now it's about results. Now it's about, you're no longer sorry for anything because you're fully focused on moving forward. You could apologize again. I'm not saying never apologize or refuse to apologize on that, but like, it's very easy to get caught up in this kind of making sure, trying to like emotionally work with someone, who is really, they're going to emotionally feel a lot better once the problem has been solved. That is the fastest, best way to get someone's trust again. Which is, just go back to my anecdote here, exactly what happened. They apologized to us, and then they didn't, send us stuff. They didn't do anything, and they just said, come on back in, and we're going to show you that we fixed it. And they did. They demonstrated it. They explained what happened, and they also took steps to prevent it in the future. Some people will appreciate this in the moment, but this is also a moment to kind of help improve yourself. I do a lot of kind of continuous improvement work in what I do, and I always try to apply that to every process I have for myself. And I think people say you learn a lot more from your failures than you do from your successes. And I think you can really put that to hard use here, which is if there is a way you could have prevented this from happening, known about it sooner, anything like that, it's a really good idea to tell the person, hey, I've set it up so now we have alerts for when this happens again. I'll be notified in the middle of the night if this happens again. It can't happen again without me knowing about it. Maybe you've fixed it on a more permanent basis. You've put steps to protect them from this happening again. Maybe you can't, and that's also kind of fair to share as well. But whenever possible, you're doing yourself a huge favor by not treating this as a potentially one-off event. And this is how you improve things going forward, is that you make improvements long-term. Because a great customer relationship is really founded off problems not happening and problems being controllable. And that means to have lots and lots and lots of good relationships with customers, you need to process in a system that is not prone to failure. You need that stability.
I just thought I would observe that this is like what they should teach in kindergarten or people.
I know. It's
Yeah.
it's a good observation in that it's one of these things. I always joke about this, that people put great communicator on their resume. Almost, it's like a universal resume
Yeah.
bullet. Is good communicator, great communicator, excellent with communication, something along those lines. But it's not true, and it's kind of hard to measure sometimes, especially with just even these kinds of things that some people might say, well, these are soft skills. How is this person's soft skills? But they can be exceptionally crucial and remarkably not universally understood in people. And I think it sometimes, from my experience, it sometimes can be a culture misfit. If someone's used to working in a culture, say something that's exceptionally corporate, they might not be used to ever being asked to volunteer how to prevent a problem in the future. They might have never been asked, what should we do next time? Or something along those lines. That's not anything that they're responsible for. And maybe there's something to be said to not like offering every single idea that comes off the top of your head. But in lots of other times, ideas are a really powerful tool in organizations. I would love to talk about ideas, but that's a whole nother conversation. But it is. It's kind of the fundamentals that are easily missed, is what a lot of this is about. And like I said, this is all pretty high-level stuff. I'm just trying to talk, it's kind of vague sometimes, but what it's about is giving you an idea of how to apply this to your own situation. Really not just in a one singular situation that I've run into, because these are kind of universal things that you're going to run into, no matter what, whether it's for your own business or just in life in general. So now I want to go into some of the, just sort of the pickiness here, which is, if you have a ticket system, if you don't have a ticket system, rather, I highly recommend picking up just like a free or $20 a month one for your business, just to help manage things so that maybe problems aren't just flowing into your inbox. Because if you don't have a system in place, it doesn't have to be a ticket system necessarily, but a system in place for problems. And communication that isn't just, hey, I have a new project I'd like to discuss, got time for lunch next week. That's not a problem or anything. But issues, you have a way to actually categorize your communication into things that have to get addressed and just social emails, chatting with someone. And that's usually what ticket systems are for, right? You send problems into the ticket system. It helps you clear out your own inbox because these problems and issues are stored in a separate location. If you end up, more people work where you work, you end up growing, you have a central place where everyone can kind of look and handle these issues. If you do have a ticket system already or any kind of system in place and you hate it, then this is a little bit about what I want to talk to you about, because this is one of those things where, like I said, if you're not going to reply to an email within 1 hour, send a response. These little touches make a vastly improved overall experience. And part of this is when someone does run into problems, how do you handle them? This kind of like everyday minutia. You're not going to, slam the brakes on for this problem, but it's got to get addressed. Otherwise, this person's going to get kind of annoyed, and maybe they get more than annoyed later, and maybe 20 annoyances later, they're pissed off. So first off, if you've ever submitted a support ticket to anything, basically anything, you're going to get an autoresponder. You're going to say, hey, your ticket has been submitted. We're going to look at it as soon as we can. The good ones will just say, hey, you've submitted a ticket. We're going to be looking at it, and then we'll get back to you once we've looked at it. They offer basically zero details. I had a coworker send a ticket into some place and it said, hey, if you could just send us over your personal information, outline your problem, do these other things, and then we'll get back to you. And he's like, that was my entire email. That was what I sent them, was all of that. And he knew it was an auto response, but he's just kind of like, that's annoying. I'm going to send another annoyed email to them already. I'm already annoyed. And I was like, okay, well, this is a great lesson. Really be vague with your autoresponder, and it doesn't count actually as human contact, sadly, but it's the expectation now. So many people use it, it's basically the expectation, whereas if someone doesn't get an autorespons, they just assume you didn't get their ticket. They didn't get it at all. So now you basically have to have it. Setting an away message. If you're going to be away on the weekend, not able to respond to things, quick away message. Even if it's a regular weekend where you usually answer people's emails on the weekend, but you're out with friends. It's going to take a couple of hours till you're back home and you type something up. Just say, hey, it's the weekend, I'm not in my office, I'll get back to anything within 12 hours. If it's urgent, send me another email with urgent in the header. Just something like that. And then giving your brain a break. I know I think we're close to end of time here. I actually have a clock. But that giving your brain a break, if your ticket system is causing you work or whatever system you use to track issues, if you hate it more than if there was nothing, rethink it. That's perfect then. So I'm going to go ahead and end off there. Thanks so much for listening. Now I'm happy to answer any kind of questions anyone has, or if there's anything else.
Question.
Mm-hmm.
You're dealing with, this is back to when you're not getting the delivery of, some
Mm-hmm.
items that you need, working a website.
Yeah.
You're hired by somebody above, but you're dealing with a middle person.
Mm-hmm.
How would you handle, and I'm supposed to communicate with the middle person for all the delivery of everything.
Mm-hmm.
And when a person is like, it's a week later, you promised delivery, always comes to me, but nothing keeps happening between the two. Do I go above, or do I keep setting the nice little reminders and saying,
Yeah, so I've actually been dealing with that.
received.
Yeah, right now actually. I deal with that a lot. Third parties are tough because you
Yeah.
really don't have much leverage, right?
I don't want to
Necessarily.
ruin that. I have a good relationship and respect for who hired me, but they put somebody in line as who I'm supposed to communicate with.
Mm-hmm. So, a really nice way of, I think you're sort of stuck because if you're nice and that hasn't worked, then it being nice probably will still continue to not work. There's two ways you can go with things like this, and one is sometimes I go to the end customer. I CC them on things and I say, hey, could you maybe write out to this person, this person I'm working with who's supposed to deliver you these things through me isn't working, or isn't really doing a great job. Sometimes a customer, the person who's actually buying the product, has more leverage. Other times I just I CC their boss, like you're saying, and say, hey, I'm really worried about this, this person. I just want to check in, make sure everything's okay, and if there's anything I can help with. Don't be aggressive. Don't
That's
be like...
actually very perfect. That was sort of the approach I was thinking of taking next.
Yeah.
Because we're talking 2.5 weeks, and we're supposed to have something done a week and a half ago, and we haven't even approved it or received it.
Yeah, just really friendly, as if you were just a concerned citizen, basically saying, hey, hope everything's great, want to know, we're going to meet on this week, but it just never ended up happening. Anything I can do to help?
Perfect. That's that nice soft little push.
Exactly. It just gets the other party involved, and no one is going to start pointing fingers. Unless they do right away, but you can't control that at that point.
Yeah.
But that's a good way. I think that's a really common problem to run into, and I certainly run into it a lot. Sometimes it's about being polite. Sometimes it's finding the right person who has the right leverage. Just depends on whether the person you're working with is actually being obstinate on purpose, or maybe they're just not paying attention.
No, I'm working on another project so I can get paid. I want to get paid too. It's yeah.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, thank you very much. If you have any other questions, obviously I'll stick around. But yeah, thank you very much.
Great. Thank you.